Up next, we have Mr. Daniel, Managing Director from Flowgare. He'll be speaking on Ramp Your Digital Commerce Success with Automation. Can we have a round of applause for Mr. Daniel, please?
Thank you, Pooja. What I want to talk to you about today is a way that in digital commerce you can be more effective than your competitor. One of the challenges with digital commerce is that it spans geos. If you're a local business, then just the geography that you operate in is a differentiator for you because there simply can't be many competing businesses in the same geo. Whereas as soon as you go digital, you're competing with at least a major territory, if not the whole world. And so automation, and specifically app integration, is a significant way that you can gain a competitive advantage. So to back up before we get into the content, what are we talking about here? We're talking about being able to use an app integration strategy to drive automation of data syncs across the different apps and services that your business depends on. The ERP is normally the anchor tenant of a business, so all of your transactions are going to end up there, all your AP and AR is going to be there, but you generally are going to have a number of other apps and services that are feeding into and out of it, most notably for this event, of course, e-commerce, but along with that, things like your warehouse system, your e-commerce front end, your courier options, and the ways that you're going to acquire payment. So what you need to be efficient is a single platform that can allow you to integrate all of those apps and services, not just internally within your business, but also externally. So engage automatically with your suppliers and then your B2B downstream customers as well. So why do you need to do this? Without any strategy in place, what's going to happen by default is that people are going to be rekeying data across different apps and services. That results in a delayed turnaround, so the time to process an order, for example, if it has to be manually captured, is obviously going to be much higher, and associated with manual capture is going to be a higher error rate, which will ultimately reduce customer satisfaction. What's also going to happen over time, and this is more nuanced, is you will end up with different data overlapping across different systems. So your salespeople looking at CRM are going to have a slightly different view of a customer than the finance people who have access to the ERP. Data gets updated in one and not the other, and now they're out of sync. But most perniciously, over time, having poorly integrated data and having silos of different systems is going to result in poor decision making, both at the department level and across the whole organization. And that's really what a holistic integration strategy is going to allow you to deal with. So if you've started down this road, it's quite likely you've tried one of these approaches already. First out the gate, you're going to default to a hand capture mechanism. Your order rates start to ramp, and before you know it, a hand capture is no longer a viable option. The next option that you might have considered would be hand scripting some integrations. If you're not a technology business, perhaps that means outsourcing to a software dev company. They're going to build scripts. Those might be batch files, scheduled tasks. They're written in different languages. They're running in different places, running under different security contexts, and they're extremely prone to brittleness. So for example, you might have a sync that pulls orders in from your e-com platform into ERP, but then you upgrade the version of your e-com platform and suddenly the integration breaks. And because it was never designed to be operational in a real-time context, you might not know that it's broken and only discover it when you've got a serious backlog of orders. And the next level up from that would be to use a citizen integrated tool. Now, these tools are really powerful because they enable folks without technical expertise to connect across different apps and services, but they tend to cap out very quickly on the level of sophistication of what can be built. So we like to look at integration as a continuum, where on the left-hand side we have the citizen integrated tools that I was referring to. These are normally very inexpensive to start with, but they tend to cap out quickly on the level of sophistication of what can be built. And then on the far right-hand side, you've got the enterprise-facing tools, like the Enterprise Service Bus. And these are extremely capable tools, but normally need a very technical skill set to implement and support and come with a big price tag. So recently, over the past 5 or 10 years, a new category of vendor has started to emerge known as iPaaS, Integration Platform as a Service. And iPaaS really is the Goldilocks option. It's not too expensive, it's not too difficult to use, and it's very easy to get up and running. And what it seeks to do is take the capabilities that you would normally find in an enterprise service bus, package that up in a cloud service, and make it available in a way that's much more easily consumable. So normally a very heavy emphasis on visual design that's much closer to what you would find with the citizen integrated tools. So what I want to talk about today is two different things. First, some pointers on how to go about selecting a platform, and particularly an iPaaS platform, and then understanding that choosing the right product is actually only half of the solution. The other half of your success is going to come from a well-designed implementation. So I'll give you some pointers on how to get started with that process as well. Under choosing a platform, we're going to look at the different connectors that the platform includes, what the experience of building and those workflows looks like, and then managing them over time. Things to look out for from a commercial perspective from the vendor, and then finally, just some brief comment around security and governance principles. So it kind of goes without saying, but any platform that you're looking at should have a good spread of the connectors available. For you, particularly, the e-commerce platform is probably going to be the single most important there. Generally, you want something that's going to have connectors for at least 60 or 80% of the different apps and services that you're using in your business, and then some way to accommodate the apps that aren't explicitly built, that don't have explicitly built connectors. So some kind of generic way to connect to databases or do things like file transfers over FTP. In terms of the way that you build out, iPaaS platforms are generally going to align much more closely with the citizen integrated tools, and that they'll give you a visual design paradigm. And there's normally two ways that that happens. One is that you're building workflows by dropping the steps onto a visual design canvas. And then secondly, a lot of data integration is around translating data from one form to another. So for instance, your order record inside your e-com platform is going to be presented differently inside your ERP, and so you need a visual tool that allows you to map those fields. So look at the workflow design and then the data mapping, the field mapping features specifically, and check that they support the capabilities that you need. But it's important to remember that although building an integration quickly out the gate, being able to iterate quickly is very valuable, you also need something that's going to kind of settle down with you over time and pivot you away from kind of high cadence, high iteration to moving more slowly and stabilizing what you've got. And you need that because once something is up and running, you need to make sure that it can't accidentally be broken. So consider how the platform supports you pushing something into production and then making sure that there's a QA process for any subsequent changes after that. The steps that you're going to encounter in that life cycle are more or less these, and you're going to kind of loop back all the way to the beginning where you're looking at adding new features or changing the behavior of an integration that you've built, at which point you start again. So assess whether the platform is going to support you across those capabilities. Now, one thing that's interesting with cloud services is there's kind of two camps. There are vendors who are pricing based on cost plus. Those are kind of highly democratized categories. And then there are other vendors that are going to price based on value. Every vendor wants to price based on perceived value, but that's not the most effective pricing for you as a customer. What you want is something that is easier for you to predict. So understand what metric the vendor is basing their commercial model around, and try to pick a vendor who has a model that gives you a metric that is easier for you to predict. So it's very hard for you to understand how many servers need to be provisioned or how many CPU cores need to be present to service a particular workload. It's also very difficult for you to predict over time what your transactional integration volumes look like. So you might start with 100 orders a month, and that might ramp to 1,000 12 months from now, but you're not just doing 1,000 syncs, you're doing 1,000 syncs for the orders and the customer records and back and forth with your warehouse system. So predicting transactional volume can be difficult. Two easier models to work with would be the specific connectors that you need. So if the commercial model is around which connectors you're licensed for, that's a great one. And then another option is to look at how many workflows you need. So what are the specific solutions that you need to get built out? How many workflows does that work out to? And that's probably going to be an easier metric for you to predict, not just out the gate, but over time as well. And finally, in terms of where this data operates, understand that an integration platform is uniquely connected into your business. Arguably second to your ERP, it has access to more data than any other software app or service in your business because it needs to be able to connect across it. So you definitely want to pick a vendor that uses a local geo. One of the top tier providers based in South Africa is best for the local audience here today. The final consideration is how the vendor separates out different customers. There's basically two camps here. On the very inexpensive solutions, like the citizen integrated tools, your workload is running side by side with everyone else's on a bunch of servers. What's better is what we call a single tenant workload, where each customer is running on a dedicated set of servers. And that does two things. One, it means that if other customers are doing a huge amount of activity, that's not going to degrade the performance for yourself. And the second is from a security perspective, if one customer is compromised, that doesn't compromise your account as well because it's running on a completely set of infrastructure. So we've looked at how some options for considering a different platform. Let's quickly pivot into considering whether you want to handle implementation yourself, and if not, how you want to go about that process. So some pointers around that are how to get started, looking at building a catalog of everything that you need to get built, how to prioritize, because it can often be difficult to decide what to build first, and usually there are too many things to build, and then finally, how do you actually just get over the line and start to figure out some things that need to get built and pass them on to your partner, describe them to your partner so that they're able to build them. So the biggest decision that you should make out the gate is who's going to build this. As I mentioned earlier, half of your success is attributable to picking the correct platform. The other half is a good implementation. So if you're not in a technology business, then you probably don't want to lead with a self-serve approach. And that's because these platforms, like most things in life, take some experience to learn how to use correctly. On the other hand, you may not want to completely outsource either, because arguably you won't be able to solve your problems over time because everything is going to just be an outsource. And so you're going to have the delay that is associated with an outsource. So in a lot of cases, a co-build solution can work really well. This means that you work with the partner or the vendor for the initial set of integrations, but you make sure that you have key people in your organization who are skilled up on understanding how to use the platform, and gradually over time you can taper your dependence on the outsourced partner and start delivering solutions internally. And this is where the real advantage comes, because it will enable you to operate at a cadence that many of your competitors aren't able to do. So it can be confusing to know even where to start. So here are some very basic tips. First of all, build a catalog of all of the different apps that your organization uses. If you're a medium-sized business, this might not be too big, but in larger organizations, this can end up into high tens numbers of apps. So start by just documenting what those are, and then document which data sets are of importance within those apps. Obviously, things like the ERP are going to have pretty much all the different types of records, but other systems are going to have a lesser subset of those records. So just document that out, and then consider what directions these integrations need to run in. And this can be just a very simple spreadsheet where you're just talking about the source app, the target app, what kind of basis you need to trigger that integration on. Is it real-time? Is it daily? And what data set is that? So in other words, what are you thinking, which direction, and then how often? Leave the last column, the priority column, blank to start with. First, build out this entire document so that it enables you to be objective around everything that's happening into the business, and then look at the priority as a secondary concern. Figuring out the priority can be very difficult. Essentially, what you want to do is understand the level of pain that not having that integration is causing you, put a number to that, and then sort by level of pain descending, and then pick off the integrations from the top and keep reevaluating that process. So here are some pointers for how to make those decisions. Which integrations are the highest impact? So for example, if I build an order sync, this is going to profoundly reduce the time to synchronize orders from my e-com to my ERP. But what about the warehouse system? This is kind of back office stuff, so try and assess what the impact of running that manually or through a hand-coded script is, as opposed to the efficiency that you could get out of a platform. Consider integrations that are already in place. They were probably built because there's a pain point that could then be reworked into the integration platform for greater efficiency. Consider tasks that are mundane. No one wants to do boring work. So if you can free people up from boring, just basic recapture that requires no thought and allow them to move on to productive tasks, that I think is very desirable. And then finally, consider processes that are error-prone. They're generally going to be error-prone because they're complex processes, which means that they are going to be harder to spec, but usually that means you're going to get a lot of value out of them as well. So you're forced to think through all of the business logic decisions and edge case decisions, but ultimately, if you can bed those down, that will make you much more operationally efficient. One thing that I think is very underrepresented is just the effort that it takes to connect a platform or an integration solution into all of the different apps and services. A lot of customers leave this until they're ready to start a project, but you could start immediately. So if you have access to the platform that you've chosen, go and try and set up connections into all of these different endpoints, because that's very quickly going to flush out any problems. There might be cases where you need additional licensing on the apps and services that you use so that you can integrate with them. And there might be other cases that you uncover where you actually just don't have the support for the capability that you thought was there, and you're going to need to pare down that requirement or find an alternate solution. So this is something that can happen in parallel while you're busy scripting out or busy determining which integrations need to get built. And then finally, how do you go about actually just starting to document what you need to get built? So we've looked at the high-level use cases. I need to synchronize these 50 things in these 50 ways. But as you look through those individual requirements, how do you prioritize them and describe them? A really easy way to do this is to just open the source app on one screen, target app on another, and take screen grabs across them. Because that's going to force you to look at the different fields that are there and understand how they map across each other and consider what the business logic rules are. So for example, you might have an SKU in your e-com platform that needs to map to a specific product code, which is different in your ERP. So immediately you know you've got to have some kind of mapping between them. So as soon as you start screen grabbing that and figuring out those mappings, that helps you to understand the plan or the requirements for getting these things built. Second, look at ways that you can flush out edge cases. So don't be afraid of the hard situations. We instinctively want to avoid those. It's not that you need to have an answer for them. It's that you need to know you're there, that they exist, because then you can make decisions around what level of automation you're going to achieve in your V1 integration. And it's important to mention at this point that an integration does not need to achieve 100% success. There's normally kind of a curve where 100% tends toward infinite cost. So what you want is a 95 or 99% success rate, and then those weird edge cases that weren't worth accommodating in the automated integration, you just define a manual strategy or who they need to get escalated to, and that's going to get you the most efficiency in terms of cost for the value that you're getting. So we've looked at two different things. First, some tips for how to select a platform, and then secondly, how to deal with beginning an integration implementation. Thank you.